Hello and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. If this is your first time, thank you so much. Make sure to check out my other videos, and if you're back again, thank you. So without talking too much, I want to tell you about one of my favorite shows of probably the entire year, which is Dali and the Cocky Prince. I wasn't planning on watching it, but I saw a little clip on Instagram and it looked super interesting. I liked the storyline and I thought, okay, what's it gonna hurt? And I'm happy I decided to watch it because around the time that I found the show, I was pretty much bored out of my mind. I didn't have much going on. And I think the last K-drama that really gripped me from beginning to end was Vincenzo. And I watched Vincenzo a while back, so I couldn't find my next drama and I kind of felt empty. And anyone who watches K-drama knows that once you finish a good drama, it's so hard to find the next one. So in this video, I want to go full in. I want to give my analysis. I want to give you my honest opinion from the storyline, the characters, the ending, and every single thing in between. So if you're interested in a topic like this, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and definitely let me know what you think down below in the comments, and let's get right into the video. So the story of Dali and the Cocky Prince is actually a really simple one, and I think what makes it a powerful story is the execution. Dali, who is our female protagonist, is a rich girl who has refined taste, is into art, music, things like that. And she's living in Amsterdam because she's attending college while also pursuing an art career. So one day for her museum, she's tasked with going to the airport and picking that person up. However, there seems to be a little bit of a mix-up because of the names, and she picks up the Cocky Prince. And he's the exact opposite of her. He is not as refined, but he is wealthy because his family has a very successful meat business or restaurant business, and the meat that they focus on is pork, which when I was watching the show, I realized that pork, and even being in that kind of restaurant business, if it's not 5-star, you're kind of looked down upon even though you have a lot of money because it's not seen as refined. So you realize that there's a lot of class dynamics. So moving on, the story really picks up when our two main characters have the opportunity to stay with each other because the Cocky Prince doesn't have enough money to get a hotel, so he has to stay with Dali. They kind of bond, there's a connection, everything is going great. So the next day, Dali goes to drop him off at the hotel and they forget to take each other's numbers, so they obviously lose contact. And they lose contact because Dali has to leave Amsterdam because her father unexpectedly passes away. So the story really kicks off when she comes back to Korea, has to take over her father's museum, which is going bankrupt and was poorly managed on the side of the father, which I had a huge problem with because they tried to make it seem like even though you can cause your child suffering if you accidentally pass away, it doesn't matter because as long as you love art and you're into your passion, that doesn't matter. Her father was very careless with money, and yes, a lot of people turned their backs on him when he died, but it doesn't change the fact that her father poorly managed the museum and was more focused on pushing art than making money, even though the museum was a business. And subsequently, we're introduced to many other characters who, for better or for worse, move the characters and the story along until we reach our conclusion in episode 16. In my opinion, it's such a simple story, but it's executed so well. When I first started in episode 1, I was really wondering how they were going to keep the story of her father passing away and she no longer being that rich heiress, and how that was going to continue. But oh my gosh, the whole storyline of her having to become her own boss, even though she's not that skilled to be a CEO of a company or a CEO of a museum, and showing how she has to constantly learn, is beaten down and keeps coming back up, in my opinion, is very inspirational. I kept thinking, if this was me, I don't think I'll be able to handle it. How is she able to handle it? How is she so confident? How is she so strong? I don't understand. But she was able to hold herself, even when other people were literally beating her down and making fun of the fact that she was no longer rich, even though the reason why she wasn't rich was because, for goodness sakes, her parent passed away, her only parent. I also really liked that aspect of betrayal and being left alone when you need people the most. It's very realistic, and I feel like everyone can relate with that story, because who hasn't relied on people when you felt like you've been there for them? And I think that realness is what made a lot of people connect, because even if you haven't gone through something as traumatic as her situation, you can still relate to that fact. And I feel the relatability is what makes people love the story so much. On top of that, there was a lot of discussions about class and how having money doesn't make you part of the elitist crew. You could see that because the Cocky Prince, even though he had a lot of money, was not invited to the yacht parties. He was not invited to the art museums. He was not put in the upper echelons because, according to being very wealthy, it's not enough to have some money. You do have to be born into a family that's been rich forever and ever. Basically, old money versus new money, and then the kind of business that you do, the way that you even make your money, can determine whether or not you're meant to socialize with certain kinds of people. I like that they didn't shy away from that. I like that they didn't make it into something very cookie cutter, or the ex-fiance of Dali not liking the Cocky Prince simply because you're trying to date my girlfriend or my ex-wife or ex-fiance. They have a complicated relationship. I like the fact that it was straightforward. I like the fact that the ex-fiance made it very obvious that I don't like you because I think you're low class. I also really liked, in a weird, bitter way, the fact that the show acknowledged to an extent that if a parent doesn't take the right financial decisions, it can affect the child when they're gone. And that it is important to be smart with money, because money is what you need to survive. You need to pay your bills. And look at how when her father died, she didn't have a place to stay. She could barely afford to eat. She could barely afford clothes. She wasn't able to take care of herself. And the way that she tried to adapt to regular life now that she wasn't an heiress was very commendable, because she did make a lot of mistakes. She didn't get it right at first. Yes, she was a damsel here and there, but I love a good damsel. I don't have a problem with the damsel in distress. She was emotional, she was strong, she was confident. She failed numerous times, but she also kept getting back up. And I also love the fact that she had her own version of a new family system for support. So moving swiftly on by, I do want to talk about the characters, and I realized that as I was talking about the storyline, I focused a lot on Dali and a little bit of the Cocky Prince. So I am going to start off with other supporting characters who I felt contributed to the story in significant ways or made me feel some kind of way. And I'm going to have to start off with none other than the part-timer, Miss June. And I like to give you a little bit of my opinion and analysis when it comes to her character and how I think they kind of fumbled the bag when it came to the ending. So the whole backstory with the part-timer is that she and Dali were in the same orphanage. However, it's Dali who was adopted by the rich family. Her life got changed, and she didn't have to grow up having to defend herself her entire life like the way the part-timer did. So she does feel a sense of resentment towards Dali because she felt as though she could have had her life, and that's kind of why she did some of the things that she did, and she didn't feel as much regret until it reached the final episode where everything started to boil over. Now, in my opinion, I think she was one of the most interesting characters aside from the main characters and the story. I would have really loved to know more about her, why she did what she did, and just to have more context behind some of her behavior. And even though they did give us a glimpse or two into why she acted the way she did, which was to make money, she felt as though they already had enough, and she didn't feel that obliged to kind of help the old man who died, Dali's father. So she did act upon basic survival instinct. Honestly, I did understand her motives. I just wasn't very sympathetic or empathetic because I felt like the fact that Dali's father showed her so much kindness, and the fact that she was an adult when she made all her decisions, and the fact that she knew how damaging this could be to him as an individual, his business, his family, and that she just didn't care, did make me feel like she's not a very good person. And I understand that there's a difference between nature and nurture, but if you look at Dali's cousin and Miss June, the part-timer, even though they have different upbringings, they're still the same kind of people. They don't care who they have to hurt as long as they get their own personal satisfaction. And I'm not here to judge what people do in situations that are dire, but I don't think she was in a dire situation. I don't think she should have done what she did, but I get it, it moved the story along. However, my biggest problem with her character and how the ending kind of happened for her, Dali had to beg her to literally confess so that her father's legacy and his reputation wouldn't be destroyed. If not, she would have basically run away. And she didn't even confess when Dali spoke to her. She only really opened up after a police officer had kind of spoken down on her. And it's like she kind of came back way after. And I know it's hard, but I can't really get behind that, because every single time I think about how kind the father was to her and didn't expect anything in return, I just don't feel empathetic. Now, when it comes to the ending, they made it seem like it was perfectly okay for the two of them to become best friends. They made it so that everything would be forgiven. They got an apartment together. They're the best of friends. They understand each other. And I just have to call some BS on that. I don't think it's realistic to take someone who was right under your nose, had the most negative things to say about you in public, scheming behind your back, basically contributed to why your father passed away in a very tragic way. I don't think that should be the person that you lean on when it comes to friendship. I think that Dali is just as naive as her father, and if this was another K-drama or there was supposed to be a season 2 or season 10, you would realize that June would be the kind of character that comes back in like 15 years to come and take back your life, because I don't think such a person can be neutralized as a threat. If somebody sees you as a threat, it doesn't matter if everything is kumbaya, they will eventually hurt you. And even if they don't hurt you, why would you even want to take that risk? I don't think it should be encouraged to take or give people multiple chances. But I don't think you should bring somebody who is a wolf in sheep's clothing, who has shed their skin right in front of you. But all that aside, I do think she was one of the most interesting characters, and I was very much invested in her story from beginning to end. So moving on, I do want to talk about the museum employees, because I've never seen a group of pretentious people probably in my life. They kept acting like they cared for Dali, they cared for what was going on with her, but they always made sure to put her down or complain about the fact that they weren't paid, even though they knew about the financial situation. I don't know where they wanted her to pull the money out of. I don't know how they were expecting her to just automatically know what to do when they've rather been working there much longer than she has. But yeah, they put so much pressure on her shoulders, and then anytime she has a win, they're quick to give her praises and hugs and be proud of her. But the minute that she falters, even for a little bit, they're back on her neck. And I feel the only person who was genuinely kind to her and genuinely cared about her was the head female employee. She actually gave off like an older sister kind of vibe and was more understanding. There was a scene, and I unfortunately don't have the clip, but there was a scene where the part-timer calls Dali out and says that she's wearing expensive clothes and shoes, even though they've not been paid yet in terms of their salary. But that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because they should automatically know that Dali was an heiress. She was wearing designer clothing, so she's not automatically going to have no clothes at all, and she's not going to be wearing thrifted clothing all of a sudden. Yes, she's no longer as rich, but her clothes and her jewelry still remain. And I found it so disappointing every time they were talking behind her back in such a negative way. And I also didn't really like the fact that Dali let them get away with that. I wouldn't feel comfortable working with people who are constantly belittling me while also understanding the full scale of my situation. But I think worst of all, it's the way that they act like they care about her, but still showing different actions that kind of prove that they don't really care and that they're just there for a check.
And I'm not trying to fault them for wanting their check, but they should also have an understanding that she's not going to be able to pull the money from nowhere. And honestly, I could have done without them in the story. I feel that they only moved along the museum work, but not really the general plot of the story.
So at this point, I'm going to be ending the video here. I will probably do a part 2 if there's a need for it or a demand for it. I thought I would make a really short video, but it seems like I had a lot of points to say. And if I do a full review up to the end and every single character, it'll probably be about 40 minutes or maybe even an hour. So I'll just end it right here. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. Like this video, subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you in my next video.